Let's get started. I'm going to start out with a little bit of a class exercise. What I want to do is this side of the class, I want you to individually come up with 3 major macro impacts negatively on some levels. One of the ideas in deviant behavior, the social deviance, is the idea of what determines whether or not an ideology or a set of behaviors or an identity or a label is deviant or not. It depends obviously a lot on who. We talked about this from a conflict perspective, who's in control, who's in power. But just as importantly, from more of an objective level, is does it cause negative repercussions for society? Does it feed into other types of social problems like crime or greed or lust? Fraud or debt or confusion or disorientation, or just as importantly for the individual or for the micro perspective. So on this side I want you to come up with 3 macro impacts, meaning on large scale society. Okay? Let me give you a difference. The divorce rate is a macro problem. A divorce is a micro problem. You see? Okay? Somebody becoming a murderer is a micro problem. The murder rate rising is a macro problem. See the difference? And then on this side, I want you to come up with 3 micro issues for individuals, their families, and friends, either of people who are materialistic themselves or are people who are around materialistic people. And feel free to use the book. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes or so to come up with 3 of them, and then we'll list them on the board here. And I've got a list here. And I'm going to show you a few videos here. So micro, I'm mainly looking at social psychological issues, issues in people's personality, personal behavior, as well as their interpersonal behavior. How they treat other people is also very important in this. Macro perspective, I'm looking at what do high levels of materialism or a society run by materialists, what problems does that tend to cause from a social perspective? I think for the macro people, think of what the main social problems that people talk about, politicians talk about, and stuff like that, what the government's concerned with, and ask yourself, does materialism make these things worse? Or does it contribute to these things? So 3 of them. It's 3 of them. 3 of your best ones. You can work together if you want, but just write them down. You can think, we watched The Persuaders, right, last time? We watched that last time? So think about that. Right? Was there anything in there in The Persuaders that might make you think that the materialism is a problem? And think about, I think for the macro group as well, or even the micro group, think about the problems that individuals face and what societies face, and does materialism exacerbate these things? Take about 8 or 9 minutes for him. And if you can, try to find some evidence from the book. Either look through the index. You know, maybe you think fraud is a serious problem. You look back here and see if fraud is in here. Which, believe it or not, it's not. And for the macro group, think about stuff like this. Is racism and sexism a form of materialism? Or is it encouraged by materialism? Things like that. War, all these types of things. Social unrest, social inequality. You know, what's the connection between these things and materialism? About 6 more minutes or so. This shouldn't take too long. And when you get done, if you're done, start looking over chapter 5 that you're supposed to read for today. You'll find some clues in there anyway.
Yeah, you buy all these fancy clothes, nice cars, this nice home, and all of a sudden, they come and get a party.
And there will be a lot of overlap.
So you make that association of nice things, you know.
You have a society with a lot of materialistic people in it, it tends to have these micro factors as well. Like I'm sure that by now, somebody in the macro side has written down pollution. You can bet somebody on the micro side who's materialistic is a litter bug. Or is just wasteful, right? I mean, it throws food away. A materialistic person would throw food away, although you could make the argument a materialistic person would never throw food away. But that's a whole other issue in and of itself. That's called hoarding. And those of you who are doing the micro thing, just because we differentiated narcissism and materialism as two separate things doesn't mean they're not interrelated. And if you take something like materialism leads to shallowness, shallowness might lead to divorce, that type of stuff. So there's more than just one thing leading. There's a whole chain of things. He actually has a...
Oh, so we're doing a chain of events?
No, you don't have to, but if you want to make it that complex. But in the book, he actually has a chapter called The Chains of Materialism, chapter 7. Because these obviously aren't... Nothing in this world is simple. TV doesn't make people do things. But if I'm already thinking about something and the TV suggests something, then the TV sort of contribute to that, yeah. Okay? But like, for example, what I gave my class last time is, if you're a racist person and you watch Jesse Jackson speak about diversity, it's not going to turn you into a non-racist person. Okay? But if you're already liberal, maybe it intensifies your beliefs. Okay? So things are factors. I mean, you've got to think about social phenomenon this way. Think about a vault with like 1,500 combination locks on it. That in order for something major to happen like this revolution or a social disorder, all of those 1,500 locks have to be in the right number. That's why, if you have a situation, like for example, if we take the civil rights movement, why didn't that break out into violence sooner instead of in the late 60s? There were a whole host of things that had to occur before the conditions were proper, just like for war. For war to take place, this thing has to happen, and then this thing has... And sometimes this thing has to happen first, and then this thing has to happen second, and if they're reversed, it doesn't work. Yeah, that's why Hitler was just like, look, we're going to go to war, and I don't give a damn. I'll make up the reasons afterward. It reminds me of the way the United States... Similarly, the mindset of some people in the Defense Department after 9/11, it was, just make up a reason to go to war with Iraq. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out later. So unfortunately, sometimes it only takes one combination lock to open the door to hell or whatever it is. So. All right, everybody. Let's start with the macro people first. All right, so somebody give me their top. Just give me one of their top 3. Yes.
I put increased debt levels.
Okay, how is that related?
Because there will be more spending on material goods.
So spending in general, so spending consumer society. Also, why wouldn't materialistic people be concerned about paying stuff back or leaving their burden with their children? Right, it's not a big deal. highly materialistic people wouldn't even have kids because they wouldn't be concerned about their future. They just, hey, as long as my son's doing well and I can put pictures of him in a baseball trophy. Like, kids become ornaments. Like I've told you, with materialistic people, with friends, like Facebook is perfect for materialistic people. Because what it is sort of, it keeps score. Or how many friends you have, how many people write on your thing. Not everybody's like this, but the internet is a dream for a lot of sickos, including child molesters and racists and people who hate women and all that, because you can find a place anywhere on the internet, no matter how sick you are, there's a place where you can go to swing with midgets or something like that. Or whatever people do for their free time. Also, the internet, though, provides an outlet for anti-materialistic stuff. But Facebook, for example, most of those people who have 5,000 friends, they don't have 5,000 friends, okay? Or take someone like Ashton Kutcher. He thinks it's like some kind of a big thing that he has 1 million Twitter followers, and they want to, people want to know when he has his morning bowel movement or what he eats for breakfast. I'm not interested in this type of stuff. And one of the things that's related, although I don't think anybody probably said this, although it's somewhat of a controversial disorder, there's a disorder called celebrity obsessive disorder, where people obsess about celebrities, and like this Octomom woman, she went and got plastic surgery so she could look like Angelina Jolie. For example, Brad Pitt had I believe it's a Brad Pitt to have a stalker. She used to break in his house and be sitting on his bed with her clothes on and things like that. So there are this element of that people are obsessed with celebrities and it become a problem. I would say most of these people are probably materialistic people. Part of it has to do with celebrities have status and money, and people want that to rub off on them. So certainly this element of increased debt and spending, and certainly this idea that, hey, look, we'll let somebody else worry about it. We don't need to be fiscally responsible. What else? So this is personal and governmental debt. What else?
I said multi-million-dollar industries to focus on profit and how much people consume, which leads to things like McDonald's using cheap meat despite them being a multi-billion-dollar industry.
All right, so maybe corporate abuse might be a good way to put that. Okay, that's a good one. Corporate abuse or exploitation. Certainly, and I didn't ask you guys to do this, but if you have time, I'm telling you, go online and watch China Blue, which is about a blue jeans factory. I think it was made in 04 or 05, so it's a little bit older. China claims things are different, but they're not. That's like trying to tell me that in 1865 that African Americans in the South were really that better off after the fake emancipation. You guys realize that when Lincoln freed the slaves, he freed the slaves in the South and not in territory he controlled. So if you had a slave in New York, it was perfectly fine to keep him. So anyway, but this idea that in China Blue, they show this abuse that takes place by Walmart and other people through subcontractors because they want to get the lowest possible price, and that's the philosophy of capitalism. So part of that, and some people might even just put capitalism there. Capitalism itself. But maybe abusive or extreme capitalism might be, let's put it there. Right? That you're so obsessed with profit that you allow tobacco companies to target children. I mean, that's what we're looking at. Or, for example, I remember I went to the store the other day and I heard these two girls talking. They were like, I love sugar. I just can't get enough of it. And I'm like, of course! It's a drug, like heroin. And the only difference is heroin's not available in the stores. Okay? And they don't put heroin in bread and in every other... Go look at any product you got in your cabinet. From crackers, to bread, to cereal, to ketchup. Even some meats. All of it has sugar in it. And it's high fructose corn syrup anyway. All right, what else? Alex?
We put healthcare as one of them.
What do you mean?
As in lack of healthcare for people leads to more people sick, there's less workers.
So you think the lack of healthcare has to do with profits?
It can.
So you think that because governments and corporations are greedy, they don't want to provide people with proper healthcare?
Some don't, yeah.
How about the cost of healthcare?
That was part of it too.
Yeah, are you telling me that it really costs $50,000 to get a bypass surgery? I mean, are you kidding me?
That's where how it looks with a micro issue too. It's just personal health care.
Right, like...
Someone has cancer and they're in the hospital for X amount of days with some sort of therapy, they leave the hospital with a $40,000 bill.
Right.
And they're in debt.
Or just straight out fraud.
Yeah.
What we're really talking about is healthcare costs increasing and being burdensome to those who are paid for the health insurance because there's a lot because there's fraud, because doctors double bill, because people set up fake clinics and charge the government for a bunch of crap. Like right now, I saw, first of all, the latest figures were that $60 billion a year gets wasted in the Medicare and Medicaid system. And they did a report on ABC News and a couple other, like Nightline and 2020 and all, 60 Minutes. They said that these fraudsters are so clever and the government is so slow and stupid and cumbersome that these people will repeatedly use the same fakes or like steal someone's social security number and repeatedly use it, and the person with the social security number will call up and say, I didn't make all these charges, I never had these procedures done, and it takes 60 days for them to even investigate these people. And by that time they're gone and living in Switzerland or wherever international criminals like to harbor themselves. I'm going to talk about a crime. I swear, if Switzerland was Arab and Muslim, there would be no Switzerland. I'm telling you right now. Where do you think Al Qaeda puts their money? In a Pakistani bank? Or with Switzerland? Same with the IRA and all the. Anyway, don't get me started on Switzerland because I'll never stop. If I was president, that'd be the first country. I'd stand up in front of America and be like, we're going to take care of the real evil in this world, Switzerland. Anyway. And it doesn't help that Roger Federer's from there anyway. Anyways, what else? What else? Yes?
Like advertising in the sense of like how they want you to look and like
Maybe a lifestyle thing.
yeah.
It's a style life. The consumer society itself, where people are getting value almost solely from possessions or promoting possessions. What else? You guys are missing a real big one.
I was going to say war and oil.
Okay, that's a good one. Or at least war over resources.
Yeah.
Or even just the desire not to move oil off of the shelf. That the reason why oil has hung on and why, like, let's get away from oil. Let's talk about coal. Something like 60-some% of all power plants in the United States burn coal. Coal is worse than gasoline in creating CO2 and greenhouse gases. It is filthy, it's dirty. When it comes straight out unfiltered from a smokestack, it can actually cause emphysema and all kinds of lung problems. It's terrible to mine. Remember the mine that caved in? And not only do those people have to get black lung, they don't even get paid that well on a lot of levels, especially for the risk.
It's the most dangerous job.
Well, your career as a coal miner, you're lucky if you get 20 years in. I mean, it'd be safer to work in like a radiation plant or a nuclear power plant. But let's take coal. The only reasons why that we don't move away from coal to natural gas is because the coal industry is so powerful. And in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio and stuff, and Maryland, that say, don't dare. You're going to destroy our economy. Senator so-and-so from West Virginia goes up in front of the Senate and says, we're already poor enough. So it's for primarily materialistic reason. What else? You guys are missing a few here. All right, so that's a big one. And in general, not only global warming, but we can put pollution here too, can't we? All right, what else? Anything else? Yes? All right, so crime rates. How about this one, if anybody wrote it? What about, what did the book say about people who are materialistic in their relationships with other people? Did microsite talk to them?
Oh.
Huh?
They don't have non-generous.
All right, so maybe low civic participation, like volunteering, no voting. Is that what you mean?
They also talked about just generosity period. Like they don't want to share their things. They don't want to share
Well, I mean, if you don't want to share, you aren't going to do any charity. You're not going down to the soup kitchen unless the cameras are there,
extreme.
like celebrities do. Look at me, like see George Clooney get arrested the other day.
Sudan.
Huh?
In front of the embassy.
He was protesting the war in Sudan. So again, yeah. And if George Clooney, maybe he's trying to promote himself. Somebody's trying to say he's running for office. I doubt that. Although I'll tell you right now, he could probably win the Republican nomination. He'd be like, look, he's a Democrat. He supports gay marriage. You're like, so what? He's George Clooney. Anyway, so low civic participation, lack of social generosity, the charities would suffer, things like that. All right, what else? What about the relationships in general?
Divorce.
So divorce rate itself. So you would tend to see, the theory would be, societies that are high in materialistic values tend to have very high divorce rates. And you see that in the United States. You can see that. Look, now there were a lot of factors that played into divorce rates in the United States. One of the major factors, can anybody tell me what change in law took place? That still, I don't believe, even exists in New York still to this day. That's why New York has actually lower divorce rates than most other states.
What was the question?
What law changed? Huh? No.
Isn't there a law that states that if you want to get a divorce, you have to go through a year of counseling or something like that?
Yeah, it's what's called a no-fault divorce law, where in the past, and this was in deference to the lack of power that women had and status that women had in society, in order to keep the male dominance of marriage in place, a man could get a divorce pretty readily. All you have to do is like make up some stories of where a woman would have to prove that she could live on her own, that there was some serious harm involved. Infidelity just wasn't enough. It had to be repeated infidelity. It had to be abuse. Again, and most women at the time in the 50s and 60s didn't have a job to support themselves, so they couldn't move out anyway. And they had to prove that they could take, if there were children in the marriage, that they could get a job or use the alimony and child support to provide a home, or the divorce was not granted. I'm serious. Just like in this country, that if you wanted an abortion, it was only for one or two main reasons. It was either the health of the child or your health, usually. Or many states had rape exclusion laws, where if you were raped, you would get a divorce. But other than that, you had to go to some back alley with a guy with a knife and a table. I mean, that's how sick it was. And for marriage, it was ugly too. And for the longest time, most states did not allow you to get married or whatever. You could get an annulment, but again, it had to be a situation where the marriage wasn't consecrated or whatever you want to call it. And in New York, there's still these laws against no-fault divorce, but on top of that as well, during the 1970s, people became more selfish and self-centered in the minds of many people, including Christopher Latch and your author here. People often look at the late 60s and early 70s as the time when sort of America broke to the materialistic side, which is funny because what preceded it was the decade of the 60s, which was supposed to be this decade of enlightenment and idealism and moving away from material things. But by 1982, all these hippies with long hair had joined IBM and wore suits and cut their hair and actually washed themselves, which those hippies didn't do. Again, remember I told you there's good things and bad things to be materialistic. One of the bad things for non-materialistic people is bathing becomes less of a priority for people who are non-materialistic. This is actually made fun of like granola crunchers in Europe, that these people don't take showers. Showers are optional in Germany when you're staying in a hostel riding a bicycle. Still, whereas the rest of the world, and one of the reasons why the hippies did it was against corporate culture, is that corporate consumer culture said to people, oh, at the job you don't want to smell bad, or you want to make sure to be freshly shaven, or you want to have the best clothes. And the yippies and the hippies, particularly Abbie Hoffman, said, you know, what good is smelling good if your ideas stink? You know, if your orientation, if your soul is wrong, it doesn't matter how good you smell and how good your house is. But again, what that did was, I think that because of the hippies' outlandish behavior, and by the 70s and 80s, people were done with that. And I think a lot of people became cynical and sold out, and they said, you know what, I better join IBM and make $80,000 a year. So I better cut my hair and change my name from Moonbeam back to Bob, and stop living in the commune and get married and have kids and drive around in my car in the suburbs. I mean, I'm serious. That's the way it happened. But again, you still see the materialism rising through that. What else? Anything else? Oops. Crime rate, violence. Social anime, that's another one. What's social anime? What's that mean? Remember that was in our murder thing? Somebody say something? What's social anime?
It's like feeling worthless, no connections.
Right, and feeling a cynicism like the future, there is no future, and that people are just. It really is a sense of looking around and thinking you're the only sane person, and you're stuck in the asylum with all the other crazies, and you can't get out. That things are out of control. That there's nowhere to turn to. The government, you can't trust the government. You can't trust your family. You can't trust the media. You can't trust even your husband or wife or your kids. That everybody's out to get you. That there's a sense in a pervasive materialistic society that everybody's out to get what they want, and if you get in the way, they're going to come after you. And it undermines things like trust in institutions, right? If you think all the government, or here's a better one, maybe not the government. If you think all the corporations care about is money, and you work for one of these corporations, are you going to be loyal to the corporation? Might you start stealing from them, or coming in late, or doing half-assed work? So there's a problem there. I would say with corporations, this is their biggest problem. Not only that their employees think that they're materialistic pigs, and they don't care about anybody but themselves. That's why they do that undercover boss show. Isn't that the impression that, like, when the employees don't know that they're working with the CEO, what kind of things do they say about the company and the executives? Right, like, they don't know what they're doing. I wish you'd come down here and see the way life really is. Right, all this stuff. And many of the times, can the CEOs perform even the most menial tasks at these jobs? I mean, I can barely tie their shoes in the morning. When I watch the show, I'm like, these are the captains of industry? Something. just stupid. You know, I mean, this lack of basic skills. I mean, if you look at these people, they don't do anything for themselves. They don't clean, they don't cook, they don't go to the store, they don't interact with normal people, they don't take care of their kids, they don't teach their kids anything. I mean, like, not every wealthy executive is like that, but a lot of them are like that to some extent. So, and I would say with customers too. Do you really think McDonald's and customers think that they're loved and respected? Do you think Walmart respects you as a customer, or does someone want your money? At least the one business I would say that's got this exactly right are casinos. They know what business they're in. You come in, you drop your money into one of the machines, and you leave, and you don't get anything for it. Maybe some flashing lights, or the hope that you might win a jackpot. But at least they're honest. All they want is your money. Walmart tries to barter junk for your money. Here's a crappy phone that will die in 3 months. Right? Here's a shirt that feels like it's made out of air. You know, here's some food that might have expired 2 years ago, but hey, whatever. Not a big deal. Here's a couch that's going to sag and fall apart within 6 months. Have you ever bought furniture from Walmart? Yeah, don't do it. Yeah. Especially like a futon or a couch, because it'll just sag and it'll bust. And with a normal-sized person on it. I'm not somebody who weighs 500 pounds. And I sit on something that starts creaking and busting, and the first time you're on it, that's a serious problem. Like I bought a little love seat, and it was from Vietnam, of all places, which, you know, we fought a 14, 13-year war with. We weren't even on speaking terms in that country for a while, so that shows you what materialism can do. So, I mean, I have to tell you right there, we're friends with countries like Saudi Arabia and China who abuse their people. Why? Because we like those countries? No. But because they have something we want. Right? Think about it. You think we'd be friends with Saudi Arabia if they were selling oranges? That's all they had? You think we'd give a damn about China if they didn't have all these manufacturing plants? Alright? We didn't care about them in the 60s. Alright. Anything else? Alright, that's pretty good. Let me show you a story. Hit on the pollution thing. And then we'll go to the micro thing. Alright, this is about the plastic, the ball of garbage in the Pacific Ocean.
Yesterday, there was a post that Oprah's episode for her birthday started with the children giant island of trash. The great
There's actually two big balls of trash in the Pacific.
Currently, scientists believe the world's largest garbage dump isn't on land. It's in the Pacific Ocean.
This is where all your
Great Pacific
crap goes
garbage
to.
patch stretches from the coast of California to
Two times the
Japan.
size of Texas.
It's estimated to be twice the size of Texas. And Oprah says, "This is the most shocking thing I have seen," and I agree.
Yeah, and Oprah's seen a lot. She was abused as a child, was doing drugs.
To give
she
you a little
worked for a
background,
prostitute.
years of bottles, bags, toys, packaging, and plastic trash from all corners of the earth are swirling in a plastic whirlpool in the North Pacific. Discarded water bottles from Iowa, takeout containers from New York City, flip-flops from California, plastic debris from the world over, make their way
Most
to
of it
land,
comes from the United
storm,
States, just like most of the guns in the
rivers,
world
and
come from
other
the United States.
waterways. They're carried out to sea where they get trapped in swirling ocean currents, forming a giant floating trash dump of enormous proportion, no matter how you quantify it.
They're going to show the piece that
And
Oprah
as you can see in
showed.
this article published October 22nd, 2007, that this was enormous island of trash was probably discovered, and the trash is 80% plastic and weighs more than 3.5 million tons. In the video I'm about to show you, the first one being the one that Oprah did, but the second one is a 12-part series done by VBS TV, and it basically shows the team going out 7 days out into the water, into the middle of the ocean, to find this floating traffic garbage patch, and showing you exactly what they found. So here's the video from Oprah.
Scientists believe the world's largest garbage dump isn't on land, it's in the Pacific Ocean. Estimated to be twice the size of Texas, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch stretches from the coast of California all the way to Japan. In some places, the man-made debris is 90 feet deep. Marine biologists estimate that 90% of the 3.5 million tons of floating trash is all plastic. In some parts of the ocean, there's already 6 times more plastic than plankton, which is the food many fish rely on to survive. How did all that plastic end up in the ocean? 80% is litter from land, either dropped
if you
directly
eat
into
fish out of the
waterways
ocean,
or
you're
blown
eating
by
plastic
wind
that they
into
eat.
rivers and streams from states as far away
Not
as
to mention the
Iowa.
mercury and lead and
A
radioactivity in the
monumental
ocean,
amount of
and the
plastic
human
trash
waste.
has created
That's where
an
cruise ships
ecological
dump their-
disaster
dump
and
their
has
crap.
cost the lives of millions of seabirds and marine mammals. When this dead albatross was cut open, its stomach was full, not of fish, but of plastic, including a cigarette lighter. And this turtle, caught in a plastic ring when it was young, managed to survive until adulthood.
Every reporter changes the story. Just like every scientist changes what he's observing, every reporter is changing that story.
What are we doing, Joe?
Well, ready to put a plastic catcher in the water. A troll. Troll for plastic.
What in the hell is that? There's a misconception that the worst kind of spill is the thing, the gooey, oily mess.
Yeah.
But it's really these nice little bits of your
Yeah,
plastic
oil
bottles that are
dissolves
going to be
eventually.
around forever, basically.
There's actually bacteria in the ocean that eats
So we're just on the outskirts of the gyre right now. Haven't really even gotten into the thick of things, and already in the last hour, we've seen more fucking trash float by than we have like the entire voyage up till now. Too. All gross, sun-baked plastic.
bisphenol A that is used to make this hard, clear plastic called polycarbonate is produced at over 7 billion pounds a year, and it's a non-recyclable plastic. What's happening to it? It's being thrown away into the environment.
That's the stuff that if you buy the wrong bottle will leach into your water.
Europe,
It's called BPA.
Asia, the United States, is that every person examined has these chemicals in their bodies. There is actually a study in Japan where women with elevated levels of bisphenol A were the women who were repeatedly miscarrying, never able to have a successful pregnancy.
All this so people can have crap
When you go out
wrapped
into
in
the
plastic.
ocean and you see that the ocean
So kids
is
can have a
full of
plastic
these
play set
plastic
that won't, that
products,
doesn't need
where
wood
in
finishing.
the world is there not exposure to them?
Palm Beach, California, on our way to meet Charles Moore, who's the captain of the oceanographic research vessel Almita. For a number of years, we've been reading these articles about this just huge section of the ocean that's essentially a floating landfill. 10 years ago, on a sailing trip back from Australia, Captain Moore took a detour to a section of the North Pacific called the North Pacific Gyre, which is kind of a swirling vortex of currents. That area has sort of historically acted as a collecting point for all the debris, and is sometimes referred to as the Eastern Garbage Patch. Now, with the advent of plastics, it's just become one large, continuous sort of dump. When Captain Moore found it, it was just plastic bags and bottles and consumer products as far as the eye can see. Like some places have estimated it as like the size of Texas. There's a lot of what sounds like hyperbole. Some people have written it off totally as just like an urban myth. So we're going to go out with Captain Moore on his boat to survey the damage out there.
Empecé con el trabajo de los plásticos en el 2003-2004, porque Charlie ya me había ofrecido muestras para analizar. Entonces, dije, bueno, vamos a tratar a ver qué pasa con los plásticos. Y hay realmente concentraciones altas de estos contaminantes en los plásticos. Y los fragmentos sí es un gran problema, porque entonces los animales los
I'm
están
telling you, if you eat sushi, you better pay attention to this. And there's a lot worse stuff than plastic in the ocean.
There's the seagrass. And all this plastic.
I'd rather drink sewer water than
These are
ocean
plastic
water.
pellets.
Not because of the salt content.
These pellets are the virgin material that have never been through the hands of a consumer. They're just what the factory uses to make plastic objects out of, whether it's
So what it
plastic
appears
bag
at the
or a
very
coffee
minimum
cup.
is
They get
large
it by
container
being
ships with
lost
trash
in
on them are
railroads
going out
and
to the ocean and just
truck,
opening up their gates.
delivery docks. It's a symbol of the whole plastic production chain, how it pollutes.
Or
From
people
the
just
very
throwing
beginning,
large
it's just in this
thing
pellet form up to these
off the
bottle
side of
caps.
boats.
We may get up to, say, 50% of some water bottles recycled, but none of the caps are getting recycled.
It's amazing how similar plastic looks to the jellies. I just thought it, I swam up to it thinking it was a jelly. It's crazy. You go to a Subway and you buy the one sandwich. They always put in a plastic bag. Yes. How long do you use this plastic bag? 1 minute? Maybe yeah, because you go pay and sit in your table and throw it. And this plastic bag go to the ocean and stay more than 20 years.
All right, you get an idea. Now, to draw your attention to another problem, I love this one. It usually makes people want to crap their pants. So if you got a diaper, get it out. Yes?
Now what are they going to do with the Japan garbage flowing out?
What do you mean?
Like,
You mean from the stuff from the tsunami?
yeah.
That's really not that compared to what's been going on. This is persistent dumping that's been going on for 50 or 60 years. I'm not sure how much that's. I mean, you could look, the Indonesian tsunami washed more trash into the ocean than the Japanese tsunami. It was much bigger. Now, the issue is radioactivity is the issue there. But I got news for people. If you're worried about the oceans being radioactive, you're about 70 years too late for that. They've tested nuclear weapons under the oceans thousands of times. They felt that the fish in the ocean water could handle it. But if you go to these atolls where they once tested these things with a Geiger counter, my gosh. And they're getting fish back into Japan now because of this contamination that's going on from the power plant. And I'll tell you right now, you'll never know truly what was released. That was a meltdown. I don't want to hear any garbage from the Japanese government or from the UN or anybody. That was a meltdown. The reactor was exposed. They were having to pour water on it from above to keep it from creating a China syndrome, is where the reactor goes fissile, starts to react, and it gets to the point where it cracks a hole in the crust of the earth and melts down in. It like creates an unstoppable chain reaction. That's what they were trying to stop. That was a meltdown, to akin to something that happened in Chernobyl. And there were 2 reactors that almost went up like that. And we've got 100 of those. We've got 100 nuclear reactors in this country at least. And Japan has probably just as many, even though they got a smaller population, because they don't have oil and wood and coal to burn. So they almost have to do it that way. So it'll be interesting to see what in time, if anything. First of all, there's no way they can get all this plastic out of the ocean. I mean, talk about needle in a haystack. Do you guys realize how big the ocean is? I mean, the ocean could swallow every piece of land on Earth and still have 50% of its air, of its mass around. What was the Earth? 70% water? 70% ocean? Yeah. So now, to fully contaminate that, that's one hell of a accomplishment, humanity. I got to give you the blue ribbon for that one. Something that seemed unpollutable and could come back from anything that we've now polluted. Take the sky. You think the sky would be unpollutable too? According to scientists, we polluted that up. Take a look at what your government has engaged in and by proxy what the American people have allowed to happen. This is the current national debt. $15.5 trillion. Look how many commas that's got in it. Here's the debt per citizen. Here's the debt per taxpayer. Has anybody got $137,000? Just give it to the government. We'll solve this problem right now. Okay? And all this is, I love this. This is U.S. federal spending for this year alone. $3.5 trillion. Now, the fiscal year ends in June 30th, so it's a little misleading. But already in the last fiscal year, we've run up $1.3 trillion in the deficit alone. Oh, probably almost all of that, if not all of that, came from China. And they're getting really tired of paying for our debt. The only reason why they do it is because we take their money. This is how goofy things have gotten in the world economy. China needs people to buy their garbage that they make in abusive factories, and America doesn't have any more money. And America is probably one of the only countries on earth, besides Europe, countries in Europe, and maybe Japan, that potentially wants this crap. People in Kenya are not falling over themselves to spend $200 for a pair of jeans. I assure you that. Frankly, people in Albania are doing that. So what China has to do is they have to lend us money, so we can take that money and go buy their plastic garbage so they can lend us more money. It's kind of stupid. But that's what's going on. That's how crazy things have gotten. I mean, look, and I'll tell you right now, as much as the politicians, they talk about how this can't be closed, this can be closed. There's no doubt about it. Okay? Get rid of that. First of all, I mean, $1.3 trillion is a lot of money, but we got to start somewhere. First of all, we got to start with the Medicare and Medicaid budget. We got to start with the Social Security budget. We got to start with the defense budget. We got to cut waste out. We got to cut federal salaries. Taxes have to go up. There is no way that taxes aren't going up. There's just no way. Okay, seriously. Now, what kind of taxes and who are they going to raise them on? We'll have to see. But just to give you an idea here, and here's the federal tax revenue. That's all we've taken in. And here's from income tax and payroll tax. Here's local revenue. I don't know if it says it on here. Here's Medicare. This is Medicare and Medicaid alone. I don't know if those are liabilities. Wait, no, that's right. No, that's right. $832 billion. I was getting confused about that. The debt on the, I don't know if it's, here it is. Net interest on the debt. The debt, just to service the debt, to keep it current, is $226 billion. That's more than Greece owed completely. Okay? Germany and other countries look at us and they think we're insane. Germany doesn't run a budget deficit like this. Okay? Only countries that run budget deficits like this are countries you don't want to be in league with, like Portugal and Spain and Italy and Ireland and Greece. We're Greece. Frankly, we're not, because Greece got there. It looks like they're going to get their act together. Okay, it's going to be tough. But I fear for what might happen when we have to make some serious cuts in this budget. And I tell you what, Donald Trump's not getting his taxes raised. You can bet that. Okay, or he'll find some loophole out of it. Okay, anyway. Here's U.S. total interest on the debt. $3 trillion. Here's total U.S. debt, taking local governments into consideration, the national government, and private citizens. $57 trillion. Okay? Here's our gross domestic product.
How would we not collapse? It really collapsed.
Well, this is the only reason why is our revenue to GDP ratio is low, our spending to GDP ratio, but the gross debt to GDP is as high as it is in Italy and places like that. The main difference is our currency is the world's reserve currency. And everybody knows that if they give us money, we'll spend it. Like if Saudi Arabia knows if they come and buy our bonds, that will give us the money so we can buy their oil. They know that. As soon as that stops, we're in trouble. It's going to be a panic like you've never seen. It's going to make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park in June.
But wouldn't it? I mean, if we collapse, then the rest of the world pretty much collapses.
Right, and is that going to turn out well? You know, you think Chinese people are going to stand up and go, you know what? Let's pay off the national debt of the United States. Because those people are just so good to us. Or do you think if unemployment in China goes up to 50%, that the government's not going to crack down? And you don't think the tanks are going to roll in the streets if something like that happens? Let's hope to God it doesn't happen. Okay? But my issue is, we have this, look, the train is this close to our face. And the politicians are walking around like they're not even standing on the track. We'll worry about that later. Let's make sure we take care of pressing issues, like whether or not the Supreme Court's outlawed pornography, or raising taxes on Christmas trees. Let's talk about stuff like that. And I'm not trying to downplay social issues, abortion and gay marriage, and all this stuff is important to a lot of people. But what do you think is more important, getting this under control or dealing with obscenity laws? Or something like that, right? Or birth control issues like Rick Santorum wants to bring up. Okay? I'm not saying those things are not important, but when you look, it's like somebody going, you know what? I'm going to get my car painted, and it's like, dude, your engine that sounds like one of your rods is knocking, and you're bleeding oil. Oh, you wait till I get this paint job. You won't worry. Well, don't worry about that black smoke, man. That paint's going to make it all go away. And that's what's going on right now. Let's put some lipstick on, not even a pig, a diseased, cancer-ridden pig with tuberculosis, and sell it like it's bacon. Or sell it worse, like it's health food. Okay? I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen is the mass is going to be ripped away, and I think the American people, I'm not sure the American people even understand that this is the number and what it means. I really don't think so. And if you want to, I encourage each one of you, if you think this is worthy of attention, show your parents this. They can pick up the phone and call somebody. Okay? No one's talking to me. If I had more coverage in here, I'll call the White House right now. You think Barack Obama's taking my phone call? You think Senator so-and-so is going to take my phone call? Be like, look, I've got 40 future American workers in his room who are concerned about the national debt. What are you doing about it? Nothing. Look. I'm not making this into a party issue, because Bush and Obama the only one who deserves any praise in this is Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress. In 1996, they balanced the budget for the first time in like 50 years. It was amazing. We had a two. Do you guys realize that when Bush took office, we had a 2.6. The national debt was $7 trillion, and we had a $2.6 trillion surplus coming down the line. If we would have kept tax rates the same. George Bush, as soon as he came into office, cut taxes, cut capital gains, increased spending, and then 9/11 happened. And then so we had to have a whole bunch of other war spending. And the war in Afghanistan alone has cost $10 billion a month. A month! Okay? And I'll tell you what, are we any closer to victory? Is Afghanistan a strong, healthy, vibrant democracy that's going to survive the attacks by the Taliban? Or is it going to crumble as soon as we leave? Yeah, I mean, come on. There's nobody in control of that country. Not anybody who speaks English. I'll tell you that, well, maybe they do. Karzai speaks English. But I'm not sure he's in control of Kabul, and that's about it. Anyway, all right, so there you give you an idea of what's going on. All right, so let's go to the micro thing. And then I'll show you a scene from Hoarders. Which, if you're squeamish, you better not watch this. I don't like the one with the food hoarders because that, ugh. Food is sacred to me, and it shouldn't have things crawling on it. And it shouldn't. That's why I don't eat blue cheese for the most part. That's like, those are little bugs crawling around. No? I'll tell you what, in Europe, like Europeans, you remember the Persuaders when he talked about, the Rapai guy talked about how Americans love dead cheese? In Europe, a lot of people, cheese is something that's alive cultures on it and soft at a room temperature. Americans like cheese that's been in the refrigerator for 5 years and doesn't have any green crawly things on it and stuff like that. But these food hoarders, they open the refrigerator and it's like, my God, what's going on? You know, I mean, even the cockroaches die. You know, I mean, from eating foods. You know, when you're killing, look. Cockroaches can survive nuclear wars. If you could kill a cockroach with your food in your house, I think you'd have it serious. Anyway, all right, let's do the micro stuff. Somebody start me off here. Micro impacts. Patrick.
Small consumer goods like buying cigarettes, tobacco, and lotto cards.
So what? So say it again.
Like small consumer goods like lotto, cigarettes.
So maybe addictive stuff.
Yeah.
Addictive behavior might be a good way to put it. Either with sugar or lotto cards or coffee or alcohol.
Childhood obesity.
Okay, so obesity, that's a good one. There's a fair amount of studies that show that's the case. What else?
Paranoia.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
So, because if you like start getting like a lot of stuff, you feel like people are gonna still try to steal your stuff.
So maybe like overly protective too, would be a good way to put it. Almost like, I would say, maybe antisocial.
Yeah.
What else?
I said like depression and anxiety, because you don't know if you're kind of like getting yourself into debt. You don't know where the money's going to come from, like your next like fix of like what you're going to get and buy.
And you'll see if you watch some of these hoarder shows that these people talk about how they shopped him to make themselves feel better. Did you find any place in the book that backed that up?
No.
Right, and that definitely was talked about in the book. And low self-esteem impacts, you know, this is like a primary grouping. You have individuals, friends, family, you know, whatever, spouses and children, and they're all impacted. If you are this way, they're going to be impacted by your low self-esteem, and they're going to absorb that behavior. What else?
Dissatisfaction.
Okay. And they connected this to a whole bunch of stuff. Remember in the affluenza thing? How did they connect this sense of dissatisfaction with divorce? Remember that Focus on the Family organization talked about this? Why did they say a lot of people got divorced after about 6 or 7 years?
I got bored.
That was one of them. What else?
I got bored.
Right, they got... Materialistic people love things that are new and fresh and different. That's a characteristic they have. Narcissistic people are this way too. It's like if you've ever seen a 5-year-old with a toy, how long do they play with it?
10 minutes.
if that, right? And then they break it or throw it away or something like that. And as soon as they see a new toy on TV, and we saw with the persuaders, do advertisers manipulate people? Is that manipulation? Because we didn't get a chance to talk about this in detail. What do you mean? How do they manipulate people?
They encourage you to buy it.
Yeah, but I don't feel like, when I watch TV, first of all, I don't watch commercials. And second of all, I don't just buy, like for example, I wouldn't buy a fish fillet sandwich. I don't care who made it, because I don't like fish that much. Or I wouldn't buy, like for example, advertisements for women don't work on me. I don't buy lipstick and dresses, so what do you mean by they're manipulating? Be specific. What did they use?
They're targeting a certain audience.
What did they do that was so manipulative? Because don't you know that McDonald's is trying to get your money? So what were they doing specifically, technique-wise?
Well, don't they like, in a way, they kind of like make you feel bad about yourself and advertise their product. Like you'll feel better and you'll be happy like this person if you buy whatever it is. So
they encourage affluenza in the sense that it's not just important. It's not just that a Honda Civic is fun to drive. It'll make your friends envious too. I doubt a Honda.
And there's a new commercial. I think it's like a new Chevy car, but it's like all young kids like driving and like they go through like the desert and they're like having a great time like on a road trip, and it's like all like people our age, young people.
Right.
That targets our age group. Like, oh look, you can have this like great fun adventure if you get this car.
Right. So they're at least sending these subtle signals. One commercial I saw the other day, which really disturbs me. The Taco Bell has this new taco that's made out of a Dorito.
Oh my god, it's so good.
That's not real meat in there, okay? Anyway, but one of the commercials, they have these, what I can only describe as somebody who's out of their mind. This guy and I guess a couple of his friends, they were test marketing. It's like the McRib. When the McRib comes around, people drive 400. They made fun of this on The Simpsons with the rib witch. People literally, and it's mostly pork shoulder, so they'll drive hundreds of miles to go get a McRib. And they probably pack their cars up and put them in freezers and stuff. People used to do this with White Castles. White Castles are not around the country, and so if you're from a state where there's no White Castles, literally, I lived in Ohio where there were White Castles. People would come from Pennsylvania, and where there aren't any, there are parts of Pennsylvania that aren't any, and like load up their car. For some reason, also in Ohio, there's no Yingling, and people will do that too. Anyway, so this commercial was this guy. They're talking about, oh, we only test marketed this taco, and they said that this guy drove 895 miles just to get one of these tacos. I was like, man, I hope you bought more than one. I mean, my gosh, 800. You know how long it takes to drive 900 miles? That's like an entire day of driving alone. That's like 20 hours worth of driving or something sick like that. To get some, not gourmet food, not a Maserati, not sex with Elliot Spitzer's prostitute, nothing like that. A taco wrapped in a Dorito, which I could have just gotten a couple Doritos and like licked them and stuck them together and put taco meat in them. Seriously. Or I could have just gotten the Dorito cheese stuff and put it on a regular taco. And let me tell you something about eating hard tacos. When do they not fall apart? Seriously.
The most amazing thing in the world. Can you do a hard taco? Thank you.
Huh? What? Something, I'll tell you right now. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but the ridiculousness of that. So let's go back to the persuaders. What kind of stuff were they using that was manipulative? Preyed on people. Yeah?
Language.
So one of the things they were using was language that did what? That's not just manipulative. If I can say something zesty or tasteful, doesn't mean I'm manipulating somebody. What were they doing? Especially that Rapai guy and the guy with the love marks, remember? He wrote a book called Love Marks.
Using, like, he would change words around to make us feel more comfortable with them, or like it's the death tax, like the estate tax. There was like global warming, and in terms of climate change, and the war on
Yeah, either softening the language to make it more acceptable, or making it harsh if you're trying to attack a competitor, or you're trying to get people to dislike something. But preying on what Rapai called that reptilian brain and things like that. So anyway, all right, what else? Micro stuff. Yes?
insecurity.
Yes, that's a big one. And these are all interconnected. So we have a lot of these psychological problems.
Self-isolation.
All right, so isolation. Antisocial behavior, partly. How about this? Talked about as a macro factor. Don't you think materialistic people are more likely to steal? More likely to cheat, fraud? They're more likely to murder people? Materialistic people are similar to narcissistic people in the sense that they are easily offended. And interestingly, with materialistic people, whereas narcissistic people are offended when you attack them personally, like Hitler, you didn't tell jokes about Hitler's mustache and stuff like that. Like, hey buddy, what's up? You don't make jokes about, hey, look at the part in your hair, look at the part in the Red Sea, something like that. You didn't make comments about the way you walked, the way you smelled. I mean, you were really in trouble. Materialistic people, on the other hand, if you criticize the paint job on their house, oh my gosh, it's on. Did you hear what they said about the curtains and the carpet? You know, seriously. Or materialistic people, conversely, if you steal from them, man, seriously, you better back up, you better leave the state, you better do something, because they're going to come at you. Seriously. So, anyway. And then, just in general, things like vanity. We talked about this before. A lot of these things, if you can look in some of the pages here. I'm trying to find some of these here. If you look here at the beginning of, I know we're not on chapter. Actually, let me go back to chapter 4. I was going to use something from chapter 6. Here we go. On page 48 it says here, self-esteem is understood by most psychologists to be based on people's evaluations of themselves. When people have high self-esteem, they have more positive than negative self-evaluations, say they feel good about themselves and believe they are worthy and valuable. In contrast, people with low self-esteem have more negative views. Thousands of studies have been conducted to understand the role of self-esteem in people's lives, and psychologists have discovered a great deal about the benefits of high self-esteem. So they're saying here that it's important to have at least a moderate amount of self-esteem. So it goes on to say, recall from chapter 4 that people strongly focused on materialistic values were often raised in non-nurturing environments. So now we're back to the causes. Remember we talked about parenting as one of the causes? And you can look at that on page... On page 32, it starts actually on page 30, it says, parental practices have been recognized for decades as playing an extremely important role in children's lives. It goes on to talk about a study done by Ryan, Zaks, and Zamaroff. It says, in addition to collecting information about teenagers' aspirations and personal adjustment, we interviewed their mothers. It says, our primary purpose was to measure how nurturant the mothers were. They said, trained interviewers talked for about an hour with the mother and rated emotions she expressed about her child. Some mothers spoke with warmth and pride. Others were more likely to reveal disapproval. They discovered through their studies, they said that as predicted, when teenagers who strongly valued financial success were compared with those who placed more value on self-acceptance, good relationships, or contributing to the community, materialistic teens had mothers who were less nurturing. And it goes on page 32 to talk about the connection between that and divorce. Remember we talked a little bit about this. What does divorce often create in a household or among in an individual for the child? What does that usually cause? Feelings of what?
Guilt.
Huh? Guilt. What else? Feelings of insecurity, instability, stuff like that. And what does society say? How do you solve problems with insecurity and instability? That's one way, isn't it? Or maybe with sex or whatever. I mean, Elliot Spitzer was reading that book. Man, there's a big bug up there. Anyway. Because such environments also typically diminish people's self-esteem, it is not surprising that materialistic values are associated with low self-esteem. For example, college students in the United States and England who are highly focused on materialistic values reported feeling bad about themselves, agreeing with statements such as, I certainly feel useless at times, and at times I think I'm no good at all. We cannot be sure. I thought that's the way everybody in England felt. Anyway, we cannot be sure whether people with chronically low self-esteem adopt materialistic values or whether materialistic values cause low self-esteem. So what they're saying is we don't know which is the cart and which is the horse. And it may be a really very difficult reciprocal cycle going on. That maybe you start out being materialistic and then you develop low self-esteem and then that intensifies your materialism, or it could be the other way around as well. Okay? It goes on to talk on page 51 here. Another way in which materialistic individuals may have difficulty in fulfilling their needs for esteem and competence derives from discrepancies. Many psychologists believe that people's emotional states are largely a function of how far they are from who, what, or where they ideally would like to be. We call this your ideal self. Okay, and psychologists talk about the difference between your real or perceived self and your ideal self. And the ideal self is what you want for yourself. Now in America, do we set the bar high for the ideal self? For a lot of people. And if you set the bar high, what is usually going to happen? Yeah, imagine if Kennedy would have said, you know what, we want to land a man on Saturn by 1969. Do you think they could have accomplished that? I mean, it was bad enough saying you want to go to the moon, right? Okay? Or, it's one thing to say, let's prevent Iraq from owning Kuwait. It's another thing to say, let's take over the entire world. All right? There's big differences. Or to say, I want a good job when I get out of college. To say, I want to be the wealthiest man in the world. All right? That is more likely to cause problems. It's like when I told you when I went and saw the Simpsons movie. I thought it was going to be great. It wasn't that good. I thought it was way more terrible than my friend who had no expectations whatsoever. Okay? Does that mean it? And I'll tell you right now, it works for relationships too, right? If you're looking for Prince Charming, are you going to be happy? Is he going to ride up with his, in gold armor on a white horse? Go, come to my castle and we'll never have to work or be stressed again. Is that what's going to happen? Is that what some people think is going to happen? This is why that weirdo was in Brad Pitt's bed wearing his clothes. Because she thought she was going to marry him. Seriously. That's why that weirdo was stalking Serena Williams, too. Said some weird stuff at a tennis match. Anyway, this guy was so goofy he bought tickets to the match and sat behind her. Anyway, that's dedication to weirdness. Sometimes, you know how people say, you should never quit, you should keep... No, there's plenty of times when people should quit. Hitler should have quit, Charles Manson should have quit, Elliot Spencer should have quit, Charlie Sheen should quit. There's plenty of people who just need to stop what they're doing immediately. I'm in favor of paying them just to stare at the wall, This guy in Syria should stop doing what he's... I mean, seriously. So this idea that you should try and try and try... No! If you want to try and, adopt an orphan, yeah, keep trying. Okay? Using children, doing drugs, probably not a good thing. You should stop that kind of stuff. Discrepancies can apply to almost any aspect of people's lives, including their bodies, personalities, and relationships. Think about eating disorders. Perhaps one woman wants straight hair even though hers is curly. Perhaps a man wishes he were more outgoing instead of shy. Perhaps another woman wishes her spouse talked to her more and watched less football. Yeah, right. You ever heard of learning to like football? Anyway. Regardless of the... I learned to like Sex in the City. Anyway, not really, but that's what some men would say, not me. Regardless of their particular ideas people strive for, when they want things they do not have, a discrepancy arises, making them feel sad, anxious, guilty, angry, or dissatisfied. Discrepancies also motivate people to engage in behaviors designed to reduce the gap between actual and ideal. Buy hair straightening products, talk to people more, discuss the situation with one husband. Also, things like crime. This will make people push them over the limit. To engage in things like fraud. Let's talk about something that nobody talked about here, since we got 4 minutes left. Serious, severe, acute psychological disorders, otherwise known as obsessive-compulsive disorder, or otherwise known as hoarder syndrome. Welcome to the desert of the real. Just like with in my social institutions class, we look at those YouTube videos. You can click on the statistics to see who's watching them. Lady Gaga's video Love Game, which has been viewed by 85 million people. Guess who were the top 3 age and gender of the people who watched that? Number 1 was 13 to 17-year-old girls. Number 2 and 3 were 35 to 55-year-old men. Yeah, I'm sure they really enjoy Lady Gaga's music. And not all the sexual content in there, right? Just like I bet if you went on Miley Cyrus's website when she was 16, there's been a lot of 50-year-old men watching that garbage too. Sickos. Whatever happened to her? Soon, one of these days, someone's going, didn't you used to be Miley Cyrus? I am Miley Cyrus. I thought your name was Destiny Hope. That's her real name, I hope you know. I'm not kidding. Alright, hopefully this should be working. Let me reload it. The computer doesn't work very well. Anyway, so in this one, they're looking at two people here. This one woman's had her children removed by authorities. This other guy, his wife tripped over the trash and broke her arm. That would be the least of my concerns. I would be concerned about things like the plague, tuberculosis, rabies from rat bites, cockroaches crawling in your mouth while you're sleeping, which they do. Scientists say that most people swallow like 3 to 4 spiders a year when they crawl in your mouth.
Can I leave now?
Welcome to the real world. What do you live in a fantasy land? You should put your. If you really want a horror show, put your food under a microscope.
I don't want to watch none of that.
Wait a minute, that's the wrong one.
I can't.
We'll watch it anyway. After the commercial.
Oh, it stinks. There is so much rotten food in this house. She's 48. Oh my goodness. I need to get out. A dog doesn't even want to live in this. This is filthy. Oh!
You are going to
So it don't matter. Throw it away.
There's a rooster crawling
A stable relationship. She married a convict.
That turns my stomach.
And you look at the intersection between their personal problems and hoarding behavior. Nobody's just a hoarder, okay? Something happened to you.
I understand why these people want to.
Well, they actually help these people. This is usually the family, just like intervention. They don't volunteer for this.
The point of exploitation.
Yeah, it is. I think definitely the intervention, because they show up looking for somebody to get drunk or high.
Pumped for junkies.
You saw the definition there.
I feel that you have brought yourself up in here, barricaded yourself up in here, preparing to die.
Yeah, I am. I'm tired of the world is me. My husband, I buried 2 husbands. I'm not taking a bitch about my life. It's time for us to get on and get this house cleaned up. You can make everybody else live in your house. Today is stop, so you can go. You can go. Yeah, you can get the cleaning up and stop stalling, or you can go and we'll clean it up. Then go. Okay, well, hey, somebody gonna get the backhoe. She want to dig her grave and put her in it.
Yes, the chicken.
My name is Constance, and I live in a small country town.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you, it's a crazy lady with all the junk in her house.
You darn right.
At least you don't have cats, like most of them do.
She's freaking filthy. Oh my god.
Cat couldn't live in that.
You don't have nothing? You give me
This
something?
woman lives in there.
I didn't have to work for it. I didn't have to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. Bend on my knees or get my back hurt, then yes, I'm keeping it.
Honestly, if my house looked like that, how's my body look? Like, smell.
The house is horribly dirty. It's clothes, food everywhere. Never seen powdered mold before until I went to her house and I was like, oh my goodness.
I'm Darlene and Constance is my sister. The trailer that Constance lives in, you can't even get in it because she has so much junk and groceries.
I told her, I said, if I get it to the door and I'm already tired of stuff, that's where it's gonna stay.
I'm Angela and Constance is my mother. My family said if she was to die in the house, they would burn the house down. They wouldn't even try to salvage.
Yeah, the fire department had probably toxic chemicals coming off something like that.
She sleeps there?
I want her to know that it's to the point to where I hate to say that she's my sister.
I don't know how she doesn't have the plague or something.
If my mother is not getting help this time, I will call the authorities to have her removed.
They want me gone. I said, well, I'm still alive. I'm not dead yet. You want me gone, dig a hole, I guess I'll jump in, is the way I feel about it.
So you see this issue with hoarding comes from a larger issue.
Right now, I have about 15 chickens and several roosters and 25 guineas. I got 3, thanks to human, that they gonna sneak in there as soon as my back is turned. Mama's in the house, so there gotta be something good there, so we gonna go in there.
If you go get the eggs from the hens, you have to go wash them and put them up in the refrigerator so they don't spoil. Well, my mother has not grasped that concept yet. When she grabs the eggs and just leaves them sitting everywhere.
That's going to attract rats, cockroaches.
So it's like an Easter egg hunting. You don't know which eggs are fresh and which ones aren't.
My name is Inez, and Constance is my daughter.
What did you do to this child? Sick woman.
Hey, that's a 50-some-year-old woman. She can make up her own mind. If I raised a child, she started hoarding.
This is your child? I'm gonna beat that guy. I don't care how old you are. You're disgusting.
My childhood
is always hungry.
Listen.
So if you wanted to eat, you better hide you something to eat, because if you didn't, you wasn't gonna get nothing to eat.
She always said I didn't have nothing growing up, so now I can have it, but it's old food.
They would just sit there and get great. The stuff that she wanted to hide, she hid it with her little chicken houses.
Yes, I hide food. Because they're trying to throw my food away. They're not having me get no food here. They're not taking me to the store. They're not asking me if I needed food. Did you bring me breakfast?
Weapons of mass destruction.
And I know how to make food go a whole year if I need to be.
She has a tough stomach. My mother has a real tough stomach. She can hold her food in.
Oh my God.
Honey and I have actually gotten into a knockdown drag out fight. I cleaned up some items and she became belligerent and got in my face.
This is like good man. I said, you didn't buy that.
Look at it. I mean, this is why we're studying
shoot me
this.
or throw me in the jail.
This is an extreme form of materialism.
The next thing you know, we were out rolling around outside and she had a pan and she hit me in the head with a pan and I had to take that pan from her and hit her with it.
I had to come over and they were fighting and had to go and separate them. So
You better not send the government after her. Probably got a gun somewhere in there. This is Texas.
I grew up with most of my grandma, my Amy. I was always between houses.
I work 12 hours, so they don't give you no time off to go pick your kids up from the daycare. My mom basically raised them.
Angela knows Constance is her mother, but I don't think she feels like her mother has been a mother to her.
She thinks she was a good mother by leaving me everywhere, kicking me out, and I don't think that relationship is going to ever be repaired.
She doesn't realize the effect it has on everybody else. The embarrassment that Angela's had to live with a mother that's hoarding everything all of her childhood.
My mother does not have a clue, and I don't think she really cares.
Honey needs to do better. She needs to get a cleanup, and she can accept the help, or she can leave.
Was she gonna sleep outside?
It's cleaner.
You really.
There's gotta be bugs and rats and stuff crawling all in there. I mean, even a place on Fifth Avenue is gonna get rats.
I love yard sales, I love garage sales, I love rummage sales.
Yeah.
I go thrift store shopping 3 to 4 times a week.
Here's another one.
I like to collect things.
See how this starts out as collecting, or like something about like I grew up in a depression, so food is precious.
I know I have
Or I grew
way
up
too much
poor.
stuff.
Or some self-esteem issue.
I'm Cindy, and I'm Jerry's younger sister. Jerry's house is chaos. She can't find anything. She buys 2 and 3 and 4 of the same item because she can never find the first one. It's just a constant struggle for her living in the conditions in which she's living.
Curiously on Rush, the 60-hour-a-week manager